How are you doing?
Very good. How are you, Richard?
Oh, I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, good.
Very good weather again.
Oh, it's sinful, isn't it? It's horrible outside. I was going to say Merry Christmas, everyone, but depending if you're in the UK, it's not feeling very Christmassy outside, I suspect. But welcome to everybody out there in webinar land. Here we are again, MZ. It's our Christmas webinar. So Merry Christmas to everyone who's out there. I trust everyone is feeling Christmassy, regardless of the weather. 'Tis the season, MZ, for another webinar.
Yeah, it is.
We better introduce ourselves, I suppose. So I'm Richard. I look after the Cressive team, and we've been getting into privacy in a big way. Those who know us know that this year. We do SEO a lot, and we've been speaking a lot about the impact of AI on SEO this year, talking about GEO, and we could talk for a whole webinar on that. But we're not going to. We're going to focus on privacy today, and we're going to focus on the people side of it and stakeholders, because there's a lot we could talk about. You're our product manager for Privacy, MZ. Why don't you introduce yourself just in case anyone doesn't know you?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I look after the product function at Cressive, using AI, machine learning, and data science to make digital marketing challenges better through good products. That's basically what I do with the extremely talented team at Cressive.
And we're going to talk for about 30, 40 minutes, aren't we? And then there's time for questions at the end. So for those of you who managed to stay awake until the end, we would love your questions as we go through the people side of this. So we're going to cover today the stakeholders, because we talk to a lot of people in large organizations who are struggling with privacy compliance. We spoke about this week, MZ, fatigue is what I'm hearing it called a lot on LinkedIn. There's compliance fatigue and cookie banner fatigue. Let's try and cut through some of that, and we could talk for a lot. We're going to focus on people, and then we're going to focus particularly on the key elements here. How do we respect user consent? How do we reduce the risk, save time, and recover the data? Because those are all problems shared by this team. But the point for today will be that there are a large number of people and very different departments charged with getting a website privacy compliant. I think that's
Awesome.
a good intro. Let's go on, MC.
Yeah, let's do it.
So there'll be time for questions at the end, won't there? But please, if anyone wants to type any questions in as we go, we'll try and catch those if there's anything interesting, or we'll answer everything at the end. So to achieve that today, we're going to cover how we look at the digital privacy compliance landscape. What are the elements? What are we going to call into? We're going to have a look at people in particular, the key roles. And this is from our experience. And we can play back, and as well as hopefully know what we're doing, we can play back and share with people today some of the experiences, issues, challenges they've got, and what we're trying to solve and make better. And part of that will be us using the framework that we developed for privacy compliance management. And MZ, you're going to take us through a demo to bring it home and bring it to life to people. And we'll show that in detail, and then hopefully wrap it up with what does that mean for the process and how do you bring it all together. I stopped short of calling it a corporate capability. I thought I wouldn't be the consultant today. So I'll try and be a real person. And also, I'm going to say we're not lawyers, to get that caveat out here. So we're not lawyers, we're not DPOs, but we work with legal teams all the time. So that's the point. We can share the experience here, and we've got sort of a foot in each camp. Therefore, we've got three legs. We've got a foot in the legal team, the privacy team, the technical team, and marketing team. We've got experience to share here, and that's what we'll get into. But moving on, we'll focus today on people and stakeholders. So if you just go through the what, who, why, when, where, that's where we're going to focus today. Actually, this listing or landscape, what you want to call it, it makes quite a useful set of different levels where we could spend time. So we're going to focus on each of these probably in a different webinar. We have done already, and we'll probably do that at a continuing basis into next year, right? So let's just start at the bottom. there are regulatory frameworks like GDPR that underpin this. There are sector regulations, and then actually how you do privacy depends on your organizational size. If you've got one website, it's going to be fairly different to if you've got 1,000 websites. And then each organization, you've got different people. And that's what we're going to focus today on the people, the roles, where are the issues, how do you make it better? Separate from then working back up the rest of the stack here, the implementation, the tech stuff you need to do, the configuration, the tracking technologies themselves. Is it just cookies? We said it before, it's clearly not just cookies. We talk about cookie banner. What a misnomer that is. It's any sort of tracking. That's what the law defines. We want our consent respected. And then we're into the world of network requests and beacons and pixels and all sorts of other things. So we call it cookie banner, but that's like saying Google for search engine. Cookie banner is a banner that helps you give consent and stop all those tracking nasties that you don't want. We're not going to go through the differences of consent, free of choice, clear, visible, etc., etc. So we're going to focus today on people. I think that's clear, but I just wanted to anchor it and set the scene. Right, key stakeholders. This is from our experience. This doesn't define how a team has to or should operate, but if you're in a large organization, I don't think you'll see anything too dissimilar to this. You've got marketing teams on the top left. They're the people who are charged with looking after the websites. Let's put them in the marketing team. It could be brand, it might be product, it's probably website owner, the person who's charged with looking after the website, driving traffic to that website, analyzing the data, and trying to achieve more of the goals, i.e. potentially sell stuff. So that's where we're talking our digital marketing team, SEO, we would talk about GEO now, this is 2025, etc. And these guys are looking after the website, and they will probably want different tagging and tracking added to the website. Often, let's use the example of the paid team. So there's a paid agency, paid advertising agency, who then put tracking on via the tech team, because you need some tech guys or developers involved to put the right tagging, parameters, scripts, etc. onto your digital assets. Let's try and broaden out rather than just websites. And then that's all good. They crack on, do their business as usual. And then these upstarts come in and say, the privacy team, they go, well, actually, you still need to make it compliant according to the law. And our experience at the moment is you could summarize most experiences in this triumvirate of marketing and tech and privacy. So that's what we'll focus here. We focused on one single website. If you look at some of the larger organizations, particularly that we work with, where you might have hundreds of websites, then you've got that dimension of scale that underpins some of the issues here. And the issues seem to be, again, from our experience, the communications and the messaging and responsibilities sort of ping around in a zigzag way here. If we wanted to create, the slide I wanted to create, MZ, had sort of lightning strikes and zigzagging like a pinball machine. And I don't think that'd be too dissimilar, to be fair, to a lot of experience that we have out there. Privacy teams send emails through to the marketing team going, we've run an audit on your website, it's not compliant, could you get it fixed? The marketing team throw their hands up and go, well, I don't really know how to do it, I'll send on to the tech team, maybe they can have a look at it. They run some scanning, they think they know how to fix it, one website, maybe more, and it's a bit haphazard. That's the experience that we're finding. And that sounds harsh, but generally it's true from our experience at the moment. Whereas in digital marketing per se, if we were talking about SEO or digital marketing playbooks, which large corporates like to have, they're good, they're maps, they're process definitions of who is responsible for what. And in terms of marketing, often that helps keep the process defined and smooth and who's responsible. What we find is that privacy at the moment is less mature, and this isn't meant to be a slight or criticism, it's just empirically what some of the issues at the moment. The legislation is coming in, the fines are increasing, and therefore there's a lack of the definition of process and playbook between these teams that help address the key issues that underpin making sure that a digital asset or website is privacy compliant. So you've got the issues between the teams here. And if we go on to the next slide, MZ, we could have a quick dive into each of those, I would say pillars, but I'm trying not to sound corporate today. So each of the teams, and here's a high level view, right? So the privacy team, who in theory has, is it responsibility or accountability? We'll come back to the issues of clear responsibility as we go through. But from our experience, these are at the moment too manually driven. The workflows and communications tend to be emails, they tend to be separate tools that fire off information. The audits tend to be a bit incomplete. And then even when they're auditing, it isn't always clear what the violations according to the regulations are. Now, if we had some lawyers in the room, we'd have a great discussion about actually if the regulations are clear and whether they're slightly ambiguous, because the law often is. So you expect this idea, certainly as a consumer, when we want our respect and consent adhered to, you think it'd be binary. Oh, they are or they're not. It's not actually as clear cut as that, because depending on the regulation and the market and what you're trying to do, again, we could go into the other areas of what the details of consent, but let's avoid that today. Let's just try and think about what the deviations are. So the privacy team are, though, charged with that responsibility. And if we focus on PI and personal information as the key element here, are there deviations? So at a broad level, is the user consent respected if they don't wish for their personal information to be tracked? So it's the detection and diagnosis of that the privacy team need to charge and lead, but a lot of that is technically dependent, because the technical tracking as such, I've already mentioned that cookies is not sufficient when you're thinking about this. It's all technical tracking, be it beyond cookies with network requests and other things. So there's a highly technical element to this, which neither the privacy team nor the marketing team have the skills to do. Again, that's not a criticism. They have to work with those their fellows and their peers who have the relevant skills. So the technical team needs to get involved. They're the ones who need to understand and be sure what the technical violations are, and then work out what the remediation is as well. They've got to do the implementation and the fixing. And if it's not that clear, they need to work with the privacy team on the tracking and the audits themselves. And then you've got the marketing teams. And we're finding as the website owners, they're the ones who are in the front line as such, because the privacy team are very good at the moment, we're finding, when people are pointing like this internally, who's let's say responsibility rather than fault. I was going to say fault. Let's go for responsibility. Whose responsibility is? People tend to point at each other, and it's clearly not a marketing person who has all the privacy knowledge or the technical knowledge. But we haven't yet seen, or I've not, in the time we've been doing this, we've not seen a CMO or a marketing team that has compliance as a KPI, but they're on the front line. It's their website. So ultimately, by de facto situation, the buck stops with them if it's their website. So we're finding that technical teams and certainly the privacy team are then still pointing at the marketing owner going, well, it's your website. I've told you you might be out of compliance. It's now your responsibility. So then we need to have a clear definition of accountability and responsibility through this, which we'll get into, but we're talking about the issues at the moment. But the marketing teams themselves, they're in disincentive for being compliant, even if they could make it happen, is that they're going to lose a chunk of data at the moment. So if you've got any marketeers out there, you'll know this, that if you, as soon as you make your website compliant and you make it easy, as you should, for people to give their consent, we're finding a lot of people, let's say 50%, that's pretty kind. We've seen it as high as 90%, depends on who, when, where, how, in different places. But it could be very large. Either way, you're going to lose a chunk of your recorded traffic. Doesn't mean the traffic's not going to the website. It just means that you won't see it in Google Analytics or Adobe, depending which one you're using. And actually, then that less data is difficult then to run the business. You're charged with looking at the numbers and working out how effective it is. And it's quite tedious to try and recover that data. And some of it you can't, because if a user has not given their consent, clearly you can't go against that. but there are ways at looking at traffic data that doesn't go through the consent filter, and therefore we can have a look at that as we go through. It's not going to be the key focus for today. We'll have a look at that as we go through. I don't think I need to. Is there anything else I've missed, MZ, there you think is critical?
No, I think
No.
Richard covered all.
Good. I'm glad,
Very
because you've got to be on the next slide anyway. So before I hand over to MZ, we can bring it together here. Here's just a representation of our framework that we've used. So it's our method, our framework slide that we're putting together. We're calling it our aim and our slide. So it's aim for audit, implementation, monitor, and then with this rebuild function where actually we can give marketeers some of that data, if not all that data, back. And then we've broken it out here to try and help the different teams and heads of teams understand what the key elements of the framework are. And then, so this introduced the idea at the top level. If it's the market team looking at it, how can we make them more aware of their privacy compliance status? It doesn't yet seem to be a KPI for them, although we could argue that probably fits into a longer term solution. But they need to be made aware. And at the moment, if they're made aware by emails, then that's a bit of a challenge, because emails get lost, they're untimely, don't have deadlines. So how can we automate that? How can we use this framework and improve the process underpinned by the new technical abilities and capabilities that we've got to improve this workflow for the marketeers, separate from then the compliance or the privacy team, who then we would get to look after the audit, implementation, and monitoring elements of this. And then a central column as such would be the technical team who are then given the information about which digital assets upon which to check, be it the banner or the configuration. So actually when we say fix and make it compliant, they're the ones actually at the coalface doing the digging, which will, it's just words when I say it, but in the demo in a minute, you'll show MZ, you can take us through the details of that right down to the nitty gritty, but give us a real hands-on view of what that means at the technical level.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Richard. So what we're going to do now is to take a demo and see what the audit process will look like. We automate it through our tool, but this is just a general description of how one would audit website consent management and privacy compliance. So I'm going to switch to, I'm going to actually go to the next slide and show you a couple of examples. These are big companies in their own industries. And one is across the pond. And that's relevant because the governing frameworks, the regulatory requirements for the Europe and UK is basically GDPR, whereas this is from Canada. So they are governed by a regulation called PIPTA. And as we'll see in these examples, these are big brands. You'd probably have lots of privacy and marketers and all of the teams that Richard's talking about working on solving these issues. So it is not a problem of disregarding privacy compliance or not caring about customers' data, but it is very much a people and a coordination and a communications problem, we feel. So I'm just going to deep dive into the audit that we've done. And before that, let's just work through the steps of what the user journey would look like.
So should we just say quickly, MZ, we're not pointing fingers here. We don't wish to call people out. However, they're quite interesting examples. So if the relative marketing managers are available of these brands, we're very happy to discuss, but we're not pointing fingers. This is just illustrative and just to highlight the issues that we're talking about.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And like I said, this is not an issue of complete disregard for customers' data. This is clearly an issue of well-meaning professionals just not having the right, perhaps the tooling or the right framework for which to coordinate over issue which is very complex in general. So I was talking about the user journey. And so the user journey that the audit tool would simulate in such a situation would be they land on a website, the website page is served to them. You see this consent banner that Richard was talking about, people are fatigued from it. And what it does, the tool or an audit process would look like is it would capture the state of tracking at this stage, which is before the user interacts with the banner, the pre-consent state, if you will. And then after the user declines all kinds of tracking, then we also at that point pick up an audit sample and say, okay, well, were the user's choices of not being tracked, were they ignored, or were they did the website actually keep that promise? Did the brand actually keep that promise? So that's what the simulation actually does in our tool. Now we've run this website, and I'll share the result with you now. So just to explain, so there's a lot of data here, but it's actually very, very simple. So the left side of this page, this is our audit tool, by the way. The left side of this page is talking about the pre-consent phase. That is when the user lands on the website, doesn't click anything. What are they tracked at that stage or not? This is the left side answers that question. And the right side answers the question, once they actually decline tracking, what happens at that point? Do we actually respect their choice? Now, in the case of this particular brand, which is a big management services and actually a technology company, we can see that there's a lot wrong here. So not only are we dropping lots and lots of marketing cookies, which are the highest risk, which is basically meaning that you're sort of sharing personal information of users with third-party marketeers. There's a lot of network requests as well. Of course, there's lots of compliant cookies, which are useful for site functionality. That's always going to be there, but they have lots of non-compliant cookies as well as network requests. And
just show us one of the compliant cookies just to bring it to life, MZ. Is there anything interesting that people might recognize?
Yeah, so this is, for example, this domain is directly attributable to Salesforce.
But that's enough. Just do the compliant one for me. Let's start with the good news.
So
yeah, compliant cookies.
Yeah. So this one is from a vendor called Piano. It's basically an analytics vendor, but on its own, this is, Richard, a tag. This is basically the library or the container load as such. It is not
a functional, essential cookie. You need it. The website won't work otherwise. Therefore, we find it and we categorize it as compliant.
Absolutely. And for example, on the post-reject side, you see cookies which relate to serving the notices or serving the GDPR preference or some actual functional things that the website needs. And that's absolutely fine. And the problem comes when you go beyond that point. You actually serve things to the user or track the user at the pre-consent stage or after the reject, which are not required for site functionality, or the user has in the post-reject side, the user has explicitly said not to do this, and we are still doing it. That's a big problem.
And I think it's obvious to say, but we'll say it anyway. We're not making this up. We go to a website, and it's just what we find. It's data. Same way that people are used to looking in their browser or using the Google tools to work out what fires when they land on a website. It's just that. It's just what we're finding. So the detection of data and tagging, it is what it is. Then we're categorizing it as to what's functional or necessary. That's compliant. And then we're interpreting and diagnosing what we think then is not compliant, because pre-consent, the left-hand side here, you're then saying, MZ, if I'm yet to give you my consent,
yes,
there are some things you shouldn't be capturing about me. So there's personal information. So what you're doing here is flagging all the red stuff is personal information that you shouldn't know about me yet until I give you consent. And what you're doing is here, you're breaking into those you consider to be cookies and those that you consider to be not cookies. So network requests and pixels and all the other stuff, correct?
Absolutely. And Richard, I'll make a couple of points. Is we need to understand that this is actually publicly accessible information. Most of it is. What we're doing is we're applying a tremendous amount of technology, our own AI into it to actually categorize it properly and solve some categorization problems which without AI, for example, are not solvable. Network requests or classification comes to mind. It's actually a very, very difficult thing. So that's the first point. And the second point is that on the network requests is that they are much more slipperier, much more susceptible to be used in a very underhanded way. I'm not suggesting that's the case here, but they're very notoriously difficult to classify, which is why most tools actually don't classify them. They will leave these things for manual rules to be used for classification. And what we're doing
Slippery,
here,
that's a good word, isn't it?
yeah, it is. Um,
Let's have are there any sort of typical offenders here that we tend to see? I see. Let's do cookies first. So yeah, Salesforce is the obvious one, right? So Salesforce is a CRM tool designed to track people.
Yeah.
Therefore, it shouldn't start tracking people until they've given their consent, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Pretty unambiguous, that one.
100%. Another unambiguous one, Richard, is this one, which is basically, this is Google syndication for page ads. That is a very, very dangerous one, and you don't need to really guess about it. You can just look at the request. If you have put a slightly technical hat, look at the request, and it will tell you what is being sent to the user, and it's not good. Let's just say that.
Particularly as Google know that, and they give everyone now the ability to avoid that happening, because Google know it's a hot topic, and then we could get into Google Consent Mode version 2 and all sorts of things, but we're not going to today. But we could at this point for anyone who's interested.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like I said, across the pond, we have a site from which is Royal RBC.
Okay, no, sorry. Let me just stay on that one first, because let's finish it out, MZ, please, on that one, because you've got Google Tag Manager. I just want to again, we're not trying to out people, but they're typical offences which you wouldn't expect Google Tag Manager to be doing something, but it's tracking there.
Yes.
We see maps, meta, pixels. There's the obvious clear-cut marketing of data, remarketing from Facebook and Meta and Google. There's some less obvious ones like Google Tag Manager, but you'll also see in here CMS-related ones, won't you? Where HubSpot is an interesting one, because HubSpot, it's a CMS tool, a content management system, but it was built as a tracking tool, CRM like Salesforce. So at its heart, it tends to do tracking, and therefore we tend to see HubSpot fire a lot of network requests unless you stop it. So this isn't actually unusual.
Yes.
Agreed?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Not unusual at all. Yeah.
But it's only when you see it at this level, with this level of precision and accuracy and also interpretation, because I think that we haven't done the score here, but we give these a score. So again, back to that point, it should be binary, but it's not. We can't be absolutely certain that all these are tracking, so we have to make a bit of a judgment call. However, according to the detail of the network requests, often you can pick out quite quickly what the personal information element is, and therefore with a relatively high degree of confidence, we can classify them as those things that we consider to be against privacy compliance until a user has given their consent. And apologies for me sounding like a school teacher going through it, but I think that's really important for people, because otherwise you get blown away by the detail of data. But we need to bring it back to the fundamentals. It's not all tracking. There's some absolutely okay cookies here, and absolutely okay. If they're actually network requests, there probably is some that's okay. Yes.
Yeah, majority. Yeah.
Right. But with the tool, we're able to do the same thing as an individual would, but actually with more precision, because a lot of this is very tricky unless you use the technology now to detect and diagnose. And then we're able to do this at scale. So we could do it quickly now, but actually it's quite onerous for a person. But we can do it on website all the time, real time, and then monitor it. So the technology can be used at every level to improve this process of detection.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Andy, I just wanted to do it. And now should we just cover the right-hand side too? I think that's the critical element of the story here.
Yeah. So that would be the part where the user actually explicitly declines tracking, and the site is not configured correctly to actually respect the user's choice and still continues to track them, or actually adds more trackers. In some cases, it's not visible here, but in some cases, sites will actually just double down on more tracking, even after the user has explicitly said, I do not want any optional tracking, anything that is not required for the functionality of the site. I do not want those cookies or network requests to share my data. And that's what we're presenting here, really.
So to bring that home, so I'm a user, I've gone to that website, I've said, decline, please don't track me.
Yeah.
And actually, it's still tracking. And it's not unusual, again, to say, once I start using a website, more tracking is invoked. So on this right-hand side, you might often see more than the left-hand side, because as a user, you go into the website experience through the banner onto the website, more tracking is kicked off, right? You go onto more pages with maps or tracking your pixels.
Yeah.
But we've modeled and mimicked the user journey here, where you've explicitly asked to decline.
Yeah.
And therefore you've said, do not track me. Do not track personal information, because I've explicitly said no according to your banner. And what I see here then, MZ, interpret this for me, because I see lots on the right-hand side. So basically, that banner that says decline is probably not doing anything, because the same stuff tracks before and after.
Absolutely. It's not doing anything. It's not configured to clean up the trackers that, for example, you've already done, which was wrong in the first place. But it's not configured to clean that up. It's not configured in most cases that we see it to actually stop further tracking. So yeah,
in principle, then, in those red areas that you've got expanded out, those should be blank. If I've said no, and we model the decline experience scenario here, those will be blank. So there might be some things happening on the left-hand side, but there shouldn't be, because I have yet to give my consent. And therefore, certainly if I've explicitly said no, the right-hand side should be blank as well. So ultimately, we should see nothing under the red areas, and everything is under the green. Now, if I do say yes, fine, track me, I accept your cookies at the banner stage, then you would rightly see a lot of things populated on the right-hand side. But again, we wouldn't classify them as red or non-compliant, because we know that consent has been given.
Exactly. The legal basis for processing has happened, and therefore you can process them. Correct. Yeah.
Hopefully we've explained that in enough detail. There's a lot there, as you said, but we'll find out at the end if we get lots of questions on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so well, we covered this one in a lot of detail, so I just skimmed through the second example, which is also very relevant. So the problem immediately that you see here is that you have a cookie banner which actually doesn't give the user the free choice to decline at all. Now that's non-compliant to even piped on its own, and it's considering that this is financial services. It makes it worse. And then if you look at one more meaning it has is that you cannot, without going into manage cookie settings and going through all of those 10 choices, you can't actually decline, which makes it difficult for the user. And what generally normal user behavior is, they say, okay, while I really need to use this service, I will just go on and accept. And that's not fair.
I think you're flagging that that be a stipulation of the local regulation. Yes. GDPR or otherwise, that then the rules are set. But also you're making the point here, outside of the region, yeah, this is a fairly rigorously compliant and standard driven sector, MZ, right? Finance, like pharma, there are particular sectors where a lot of time and trouble is spent by these organizations making sure they're compliant now, FSA particularly for financial services. But then they don't seem to be applying the same rigor to the privacy.
Exactly. And I mean, their result, I mean, it is in many ways, it's actually much worse, unfortunately, than the one we saw. And you can say, you were talking about usual suspects, Richard, and I mean, you see unfortunately, the worst ones here. So again, all of it, this is marketing, cookies, vendors like Microsoft, Clarity, Google, DoubleClick, which is Google advertising, Google Analytics, and then you see much more on the network request side, which is something we were talking about as well. Interesting that all of this is happening at the pre-consent phase, and you'll see that the post-rejection phase is blank. Why is it blank? Because there is no decline button, right? So you cannot simulate the rejection phase because there's actually no decline button, and that alone actually makes this non-compliant, as we just said. But even if you were to ignore the right side and say, oh, well, we couldn't really capture this data, the data on the tracking on at the pre-consent level just blows this into very high risk, especially for a financial services site. So you have huge number of requests going to Google Ads, you have requests going to Bing, you have requests going to all sorts of other tracking technologies. Some of them might be argued that they, for example, Hotjar is an analytics tool for heat maps, but it's still, you can't do that without asking people, like getting consent from people, and this is happening at the pre-consent stage.
This one's an absolute ripper. At the risk of using cricket phrases in a week, I don't want to talk about cricket, MZ, but 165 non-compliant network requests. Again, just put this in perspective for people. Again, this is not unusual. For those people who look at it and go, oh, that's a lot. Yeah, large organizations and big global brands tend to put a lot of tracking on. So it's not unusual that you find 100, 200, 300, 400, sometimes more elements of tracking. Every time you poor consumer, you go to a website, all sorts of stuff can be fired. I mean, huge amounts of tracking, and a lot of it is compliant. Let's have a look at the compliant ones. I always like to start with the positive news. MZ, let's have a look at the compliant stuff for me. They're functional stuff. It looks like a bit of tag managers. Tag manager can be okay. Looks like the Royal Bank itself. It looks like they're probably their CDN, their content management system.
A lot of it is first party.
Yeah.
For assets, and which is absolutely fine. Yeah.
Which is absolutely. That's required to run the website. It's got to serve. So stuff happens. Stuff is kicked off and fired. But clearly what you don't want as the person in charge of the website, and certainly as the user, you don't want those things fired off that you haven't yet given consent for. Again, there's a risk of sounding obvious, but I think it's really important to keep bringing it back to the fundamentals. The typical culprits there under cookies, it's all the analytics, Bing, Google, DoubleClick, the usual. And just go into the network request for me again, the non-compliant. Let's have a look at the horror show. Yeah, so it's more analytics, Bing again, it's other elements of it. Okay, and that's interesting because oftentimes you'll see one same element at Google Analytics, it'll be firing cookies, but actually be firing network requests as well. And I will say at this point, one thing we are seeing more, not in relation to this particular example, but there's a general observation I'll share, is because of the focus on cookies and cookie banners, technical tracking teams, who I won't name, appear to be moving more of the technical tracking into network requests, as if that's okay, as if they're not cookies, that's okay. And if cookie banners indeed stop cookies, everything's okay. We're enabling consent, that's okay. But it's not okay if you're just moving the tracking into network requests instead and not calling it cookies. Now, I could be unfairly judging some of the technical trackers who aren't doing that, and that's just an improvement in the technology, perhaps. If you're cynical, which clearly I am not, and it's Christmas, 'tis the season to be cheerful, you could argue they're just trying to get around that and get some tracking in that's harder to detect, diagnose, and stop. Well, that's not really fair either, and clearly it's not playing, well, it's playing the game, but it's not fair. So let's, aside from that's just an observation. The critical element here, MZ, you're showing us is that it's important to be able to analyze and ID and classify the technical tracking fast, at scale, at the sufficient level of precision and technical detail that's required.
Yes.
And not just rest on your laurels and go, oh, we blocked some cookies, everything's okay, happy days. So in the last example, we saw the button wasn't working. This one is a good example because, there's no button to press. We can't mimic the situation. We can't mimic every situation, right? We're still learning and making it better. But we can do this now with a high degree of precision at very low cost because it's automated and technically driven. We can do it on one website, and we could do it on thousands of websites.
Absolutely. Let me go backward really over time, I think. So I'll just go back to the slides, start from where I left off. I don't think we have much to go on now.
It might have been unfair because I don't know or believe we've got people from Capgemini or Royal Bank today. So we're not to be libelous today. We're just showing these as an example. If anyone would like us to dig into a website, please stick it in the chat, or if nothing else, we run out of time today, then talk to us and we can guide you with some initial data, couldn't we? Oh, yes. So that's just the detection and diagnostics, but that's not the only element. Let's run through the rest of the framework, MZ. Tell us about implementation.
Yeah, so once we have the audit, we know what is wrong with the tracking, what is non-compliant, and what we need mitigated to resolve the problem, become compliant again. But that's just a list of, as we just saw, it's just a list of problems, a list of trackers. And the next layer in the AMR process is implementation. And to do this at scale, what we need to do is to produce something which is as simple, or not as simple, but as prescribed as, for example, an IKEA. If you order something from IKEA, its instructions are really simple. They are for everyone. Now, I don't mean to say that techs who are being helped with this implementation piece are everyone. They will hate hearing that, but they do need, oftentimes they ask for very specific instructions, specific lists of things that they need to do to fix tomorrow, and that's absolutely fair. At the moment, without the implementation piece, we give them list of violations, which is not good enough. So what the tool now does, the next step in the framework, is it produces IKEA-styled checklists of things that they need to do. These are steps that they need to take to mitigate each of those problems. What it also does is that it can, as we saw, there were lots of repeat problems, right? So it can combine things under a single root cause and say, okay, well, if you fix this network request, it will actually take care of 5 cookies and 7 network requests on its own. And that makes it efficient. And more efficient, actually, when you apply it across multiple websites that your company might own. So that is how we scale the implementation and the fixes by the implementation and the tech team, who are swamped with fixing the problems that we just saw in the audit.
We're using the technology in on itself then, MZ, right? So if we're going to the trouble of using the clever tech to tell us what's wrong with the compliance, actually the flip side of the coin is, well, actually tell me what to fix then. So what you're saying here is we can produce the IKEA checklist that actually guides the tech team straight away without them having to sit down and think about it. Here's what you should fix because here's what I found wrong, which time saving for precision and accuracy, we're finding this is huge. Most of the organizations that we start with, the tech team would just pick this up. They would just be told, this website's not compliant, please fix it. Well, they've got to go then and rerun the audit, find what's wrong, do the diagnosis, try and fix it. This is much more clinical and surgical, isn't it, about how we're doing it. And again, we can do it at scale. And then we can do it quickly and fast. So as soon as we find something that's out of compliance and audit it, on the back of that, we can produce the checklist for the fix.
Yeah, absolutely. Helping developers, which I have really a lot of sympathy for, Richard. As you know, debugging is a problem.
Yeah, I always like to dog on the tech teams, but yeah, it's tough business, right? The marketing folks want talking about marketing. The privacy guys just say fix it, and then the tech teams are there left to actually try and make it happen. Thank you. There we go. So here's just one view of looking at the resulting process, just to then bring it back to the people and then try and highlight these, what we would say are improved processes compared to those that we typically tend to see. So let's just reframe it back. It's marketing teams, privacy teams, and tech teams who, between them, ultimately are charged with looking after the privacy compliance on behalf of us users, and they want to have a website that's compliant, and they need to have a website that's compliant according to the law. So at the moment, remember, they were zipping about and trying to inform each other and share data. What we're proposing here then is a smoother process to automate certainly the communications flow first and foremost. So if you then have one system, and I'll start at the bottom here, if the marketing team fill in and then make people aware of their website on a digital asset inventory, then the privacy teams can use the technology, and then we can do the detection and diagnostics to run the privacy audits. And then the privacy team have that proactive scored list. So if any regulators ever come along in the future, you can go to the standard report and show them this was the status at the time, these are the actions that we've tried to mitigate and fix it. And they've got that documentation and proof. The onus then is covered that they've done their job proactively. So that communication flow is much smoother using the tools, and they've got the audit data. Then that audit data can be shared. You've got the sweep round, as well as the privacy team obviously adding the wider value that they do around the impact assessment and policy definitions, but a lot of that is laid down. The action and the tasks as such, very much on a website by website basis, then are the day-to-day actions. How do you actually then get it fixed? We've already said we could produce the fix list in an automated fashion. That implementation side, that box then is ticked. The privacy team can send it to the tech team. And as well as then it being on the system, it can be automated. So as well as auditing and implementing, we can then monitor it. So then we finish off the AIM process as such, because then we can continually monitor, know that the website hasn't been fixed yet. The tech team might be out on their Christmas lunch. There might be a delay in implementation, but it is fixed in the first week of January. And actually then we find through the monitoring, the privacy team can then sleep. They haven't slept over Christmas because of the incompliance. They're then happy that everything has been implemented correctly, and we continue to monitor the digital asset. So we can improve the processes here with the framework that runs through and automates the communications and the workflow steps between the teams. I put on the right-hand side there the RACI idea. We're yet to see a fully fledged level 5 maturity capability in an enterprise where this is done fully. We're still aiming to get there, but it's the humans that slow it down, right? It's the people, it's us, it's the marketing, it's privacy and tech teams. Automating their flows doesn't happen overnight, and the correct responsibility, accountability, contribution information steps, you would then benefit from that similar playbook that I mentioned at the start that exists often in digital marketing teams around channels and advertising. We would propose a similar one across these parties and teams within the privacy discipline, but it has to involve these 3 levels. That's the point here. We've already said it's challenging in each of the teams. They have challenges between them, but the technology is there to improve each of the steps and workflow those steps through to a better, more accurate, more cost-effective solution, MZ, as an overall capability.
Yeah, got it. Perfect. Let's move on to, I think we are basically done with the agenda. We have a few questions through it. Do you want to do the questions before we do the summary? I think that makes...
Yeah, probably, although be honest, we'll forget and just do it. So let's just do a quick... We've spoken about people, right? And therefore, the best way to connect the people is through the process. We've introduced the framework. There's more information about the product itself. If you go online, we'll share these slides and you can go and click on the links. It was a good idea to keep in the ICO resources as well, MZ, because there's some excellent stuff on their website. Here's a link out to the banners in particular. That's very good. You're planning to share a helpful planner, a checklist, so you'll do that afterwards to those people who are interested and want to plan ahead into next year. And say if we can we'll answer questions now, but if we can actually dig into any detail with consultations, please contact us. We're happy to go through. You can tell we quite like this stuff. We're very happy to go through in detail for your own situation outside of this offline, if there are particular questions you've got around people or process or anything else to do with privacy. And please, just a final thought, if there's any feedback on today, if it was too fast, too slow, too detailed, not detailed enough, let us know, or if there are particular topics you want us to cover. So that means we haven't got to come back to this slide, MZ, that's all I'm thinking. And again, if we forget, let's take any questions if anyone has any questions as we go.
Yeah, I think we probably just have time for one question, and
Okay.
somebody who asked, let me just read the question. Agencies are another stakeholders, right? And where do they fit in AMR? And they're obviously talking about not only agencies that are outsourced on the marketing side, but also probably on the tech side. So I think we can use this diagram to sort of talk about that, Richard.
I think it probably fits here, doesn't it? Yeah, well, I'm an SEO, so I'm programmed not to like agencies, if SEOs aren't agencies. Seriously, yeah, they're people that should be on this map. This is just a map and simulated high level. So I would add the agencies here. If let's say it's a paid agency, or it could be CRM agency. There are lots of different activities. I'd put them on the right hand side here under campaigns and then marketing team. Let's think they're the people who are trying to do marketing, affect the funnel, drive sales, bring in marketing qualified leads. So I would lump them here, and therefore under each of these teams you could list subsets of teams. Absolutely. So agencies on the marketing side, you've got other development teams, someone looks after the CMS, you probably got the user design agency and other teams. You'll probably have, for large organizations, internal infrastructure teams, sysadmin, all the people who get involved in all the tech stuff. I would lump them there. And clearly there are legal teams and internal privacy teams as well, more people in there, but they tend to be fewer at the moment. But clearly they're bulking up. Again, they're going to have a look at LinkedIn, and all the large organizations are bulking up on privacy teams and lawyers at the moment because of the rise in regulation and the rise in fines and risk that large brands face if they don't get this privacy process in place. But yeah, clearly we would expand this out with more people and more teams. Do you think that answers the question?
I think so.
Hope so.
Yeah. Just we have one more question, only 4 minutes to go. So I'll try to answer that. How do you ensure that AI used in your tools don't hallucinate? So obviously that's a very question for the time, for the times. So so that's a very good question in terms of the challenge from a product perspective. And there's a bunch of techniques we do. The first one is that we use AI in a very targeted, a very precise way. We guardrail tremendously through rules-based programming. We guardrail through what we get as a response from AI. We pass it through lots of layers of checks. Is it the right format? Does it say the right things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We obviously have humans looking at the AI output, the audit output, for example, that we saw in the presentation. We have people studying it, not obviously every result, but overall from the, let's say, a 10% sample. And that appears to be a very good process. What we find from our work is that if you use AI in this very targeted, with a lot of context, obviously the prompt engineering is a big part of it. So if you use AI in this very, very targeted and precise way, with lots of context, with lots of information and the right prompting for narrow tasks, then the accuracy is very, very high. Obviously, it's different for different models, but our finding is the narrower the task is, the more richer the context is, and the better experimented or iterated the prompt is, you can get very, very high accuracy.
Two things I'll add there quickly, MZ. I mean, the analogy, not a very nice one perhaps, is cancer pattern detection and recognition. right?
Yeah.
That's one thing that AI is very good at, and therefore the complexity AI is very good at to trawl through at scale, at speed. It isn't right 100% of the time. You do get some false positives, but the point is you can do so much so quickly. Overall, there's a massive benefit in doing so. As you say, as long as you've got the guardrails to identify outliers and make sure that you have some sort of check system. And the other important thing I'd add into what you said there is don't underestimate the experience and learning from us. So as well as machine learning, it's agency learning, for want of another phrase. It's the expertise that we've got doing this a lot and working with AI to make sure then we add in and supplement it with all the learning experience that we've got.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think that's not rocket science, but it's a critical element here in being able to stop hallucinations as such or things going wrong in the overall package. So it's the tools and how we use the tools to the benefit from experience. Got
it. Let's close there, Richard, because we have a few seconds. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, bang on the hour. All right. I don't have anything else to say. But please send your questions in offline if we can answer anything. Please send your feedback. We'll send out a recording of this so you've got it, and then you'll get MZ's Christmas gift packaged with the handout about a plan for next year.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Good.
Thank you.
Let's wish everyone a Merry Christmas. And we'll do it all again in January, the next webinar.
Take care, everybody.
Bye. Cheers. Bye.